it's Amanda Rieger Green. Welcome to Soul Sessions. Thank you for joining me for this episode today. Let's start with a couple of cleansing breaths just to center ourselves. Find a little bit of space in your body, elongate your spine, and wherever you are right now, begin to center and find a little bit of stillness. Let's together take a deep inhale through our nose, bringing it up through your belly, your chest, your throat, your cranium, holding that breath, and then gently beginning to exhale through the nose, traveling back down through the body, expelling the air all the way out. Hold, and let's repeat this 2 more times. Inhaling deeply, even deeper this time, expanding your chest more, feeling the rise in your spine, in your crown chakra. Holding, exhaling through the nose gently, allowing every particle of air to release from your body. Hold at the base of your spine. One last inhale, make it a good one. Inhaling deep, 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 deep. Fill your whole body with oxygen, lightness. And then go ahead, open your mouth, audible sigh. Okay. Felt wise to center today, especially as it relates to the topic. Today is part 2 of Oracle cards working with full and new moon energy, or full and new moon eclipse energy, using Oracle cards, tarot cards as divination tools. Today, I'm going to focus on new moon energy. And the new moon energy for me, especially when I'm utilizing all of my sacred tools and resources, is vastly different than the full moon. The full moon has that beautiful opposition. There's energy, there's illumination, there's a scatteredness to it. It's erratic. It has a vitality to it that is extroverted, and there's a life force. So it brings us out of our comfort zone. The new moon is about a fusion of energy. The sun and the moon are quite literally conjunct, fusing together. Their energy is conjoined. And this in astrology is the most powerful astrological configuration. It's a conjunction. So anytime 2 planetary bodies come together, whether it's Mars and Neptune or it is the sun and the moon, they are coming together in conjunction, and their energy, their character traits, their attributes fuse. But what is unique about the lunar cycle of a new moon is the sun is about our vitality, our life force, how we express ourselves and move about on the physical plane in the 3-dimensional reality that we live in. And the moon is about our soul, our subconscious, our inner life, our inner world. So when we fuse the light and the dark, the inner and the outer, what is above and what is below together, it's a point of magic. It's a point of pure positive potential. And of course, most of you out there are already working with new and full moon energy, so you can likely feel the difference in a new moon versus a full moon. The full moon gets me amped up. I don't usually sleep well. My dogs are acting crazy during a full moon. You all know that the ER amps up. Babies are being born. Wrecks are happening. Wild stuff happens on the full moon. How? Woo! Like, that's full moon energy. But the new moon is this turning inward. It's introspective. It is connective with our divine potential. And the analogy that has always resonated with me most deeply is germination. It's planting a seed in the darkness, deep in the soil, to germinate. And when we plant that seed, and I talked a little bit about this in the full moon energy, when we plant it, it doesn't just sprout up automatically. It must be nurtured and watered and given the ability to spring forth So that time, the time of the new moon, is so personal. New moons are personal and divine. Full moons are much more social and connective. Things are happening externally during a full moon. So in that new moon energy, you want to make it sacred. Not that you don't make the full moon sacred. That is just as sacred as it can be. But it's that quiet reverence that you hold within, and it's private. It's private. It's between you, yourself, and the divine. And it's one of those phases of time that I love and adore the most because I'm able to really connect psychologically, psychospiritually, and pull things out of myself that I may not have been able to access in another lunation or energy field prior to that. And I'll go back to my general rule of thumb. And if you're listening to this, I encourage you to listen to part 1, which focuses on the new moon, because I'll go into a lot of details around working with oracle cards, tarot cards, rule of thumb around the energy. So definitely listen to that and review it. I'm going to talk more about the new moon and more specifically about the rituals, but I'm not going to go into as much detail and depth around the oracle and the tarot cards here. But one of the things that I find so valuable about the new moon is that I get very still within myself and I enjoy that time. I was on the phone this morning with a dear client of mine, and she's an incredible human being, a very old soul. She's walked through all sorts of tremendous pain and tragedy with astounding resilience since I have known her. And we were just talking about giving yourself credit where credit is due. And she's a really strong personality. She's a Capricorn. She takes charge. She's had to take charge in life. And this phase of her life is about what is next for me? When do I feel delighted? When am I joyful? When am I happy? And we were talking about what was coming through, and our discussion was around her God-given gifts and talents, who she is. She is resilient. She is naturally resourceful. She is strong and courageous. She is fortified, and she is also deeply loving. And all of that was coming through, and I was saying that to her, and I knew as I was saying that to her, like square in the face, even though we were, over the phone, it was like I was looking into her soul and into her face and saying, "You are beloved. You are incredible." And she said, "This is so uncomfortable to hear." And I said, "I know it is. I can feel it all over your field. But what I'm saying to you is your soul and the way I see you, who I know you are, can you sit down with yourself and say, I am amazing. I am miraculous. I am strong. Like, wow, I am so incredibly amazed by what I have been able to accomplish in this lifetime." And we don't give ourselves enough time to praise ourselves. And this is not an ego-based form of praise, but the new moon creates a space for us to look deep within ourselves and our souls and to give ourselves nurture and to illuminate the parts of ourselves we may not take time to praise and recognize. That's the beauty of the new moon. And also with the new moon, of course, the shadow behaviors come up because it's dark. The new moon is this dark time. And new moons for me, I find a tremendous comfort in them because I was born on a new moon. I was like, this is like, like I talk about the 9 energy for me in numerology and how hardwired it is into my numerology code. I was also born literally about 30 seconds after the new moon was exact. I mean, to the minute I was born with a Libra sun and Libra moon. And it's funny because my mother was born on a new moon. It wasn't actually perfected like mine was. And One of my half sisters was born on a new moon, and that stuff blows my mind, right? But I was born on a new moon. So my whole personality and soul and energy is very new moon like. And the new moon is a little bit like walking between the worlds. I understand myself better because of the lunation phase that I was born under. And that is a whole other episode and a whole other discussion, because there are multiple lunations. And when you understand the lunar cycle and phase you were born under, it shows you part of your soul's journey, your life path, and your life lessons, and what's going to be helpful for you and what may be more of a challenge. So I promise to do an episode on that because I think you all will find it fascinating. But I understand myself better because I am very new moon-like, which means I can appear out in the world and connected, but I'm very introspective and can be a little too safe within myself and my own company and my solitary time. But if there's ever a time for really being personal with yourself, it's the new moon. And I find that my oracle cards, tarot cards, and ceremonial practice around new moons, it is my most sacred time. And I look forward to it. I feel a different part of myself open up in that time, and always beautiful truths are revealed. And sometimes they are painful truths, painfully beautiful. And sometimes it is illuminating, oh my gosh, karmic, this makes sense right now. So for your new moon practice and ceremony and ritual, to me, it is important to find very quiet, sacred, still place and space. The other thing is, like I said in the last episode, with any lunation, you want to wait until the moon is perfected. The aspect is perfected. So you can find out what time the moon is occurring. And then once that perfection happens, then thereafter you do your ceremony. And if it's at 2:30 in the morning, if you have the time, do it in the morning when you wake up. And if you don't, and you're running and blowing and going, do it that night. It's okay, but do it after, because the energy needs to build and the moon needs to pass the sun. That's what is happening in the new moon. You want it to perfect, and you want the moon to cross over the axis of the sun. It triggers an energy. It triggers an awareness that may not have been available yet. So think of it that way. But also, if you can't do it within the first, 3, 6, 8, 10 hours, it's okay. Just do it within the first day or so, at the least. And again, I also mentioned moon void of courses last time. That plays into it. And I will also do an episode on the moon void of course, because it warrants its own episode. And I have worked with moon void of courses for years now, but I've actually worked with them more specifically in the last 10 or so months. And there's a lot of magic with moon void of course and what that means. So stay tuned on that, because it's something that happens about every 3 days. I'll explain that later. I want to start out in thinking about our new moon and our new moon time and ceremony by reading you something. So in 2019, I wrote, I guess, my second or third book. And it's called The Book of Ceremonies, Making Magic with New and Full Moons. And I have to tell you, I co-authored this with a business partner at the time, and this book is actually fabulous. It's not in print any longer. Spoiler alert, sorry, so sad. But this book has ceremonies for every single zodiac sign, for every full moon and every new moon. And it has numerology codes. I mean, it has so much stuff in it. It probably needs to be reprinted. And I wrote it with a woman named Tiffany Harlick. And I probably need to call her, and we probably need to republish it and maybe update it a little bit. But the book is great. But I want to read you the opening couple of paragraphs around the new moon, because I think it encapsulates the energy beautifully. And this is for new moon ceremonies. There's a quote that starts out, "The day you plant the seed is not the day you eat the fruit." Fabian Fredrickson. That's such a good rule of thumb. The day you plant the seed is not the day you eat the fruit. That right there encompasses new moon energy. All right. The new moon is a lunar power time when your chakras, the energy centers in your body, are open and most receptive to starting something new and changing karmic patterns. The new moon phase is an ideal time to receive divine blessings and insights for personal and spiritual growth. These lunar vibrations activate energy for finding practical solutions, reigniting passions, and taking the first step towards a new habit. During the new moon cycle, we perform ceremonies to illuminate what we need to know about divine will in our lives. We ask ourselves and God or our higher power, what is the next right step? We can make wishes and set intentions not only for ourselves, but also to raise the energy of the collective consciousness here on Earth. I loved reading this today because I was like, oh, I wrote that in 2019. Oh, that's right. This thing about raising consciousness and frequency, it's not a new thing for me. This has been going on for a while, and it's written here that new moon time, it's not just about us. It's about raising the energy of the collective consciousness here on Earth. And here's the last bit I'll read. Reminder, it takes time for wishes to manifest. The universe is co-creating with you at its own pace, weaving things together that are in your best interest according to your unique needs and desires. Unanswered wishes are not mistakes. Shout out to that book. And I know a handful of you out there have that book because you've told me and you're like, oh, I did this new moon ceremony because we have 24 ceremonies in that book of all different sorts. And it's a lot of fun. All right. So with your oracle cards or your tarot cards, you can make it your own. The questions that I am giving you for a new moon spread or a full moon spread, I'm using 4 cards, but this is just a starting place, a guidepost for you. I ask different questions, different times, and the most standard rule of thumb spread at any given time is a past, present, and future spread. So that would be a 3-card spread. What do I need to know from the past? Where am I right now? And where is all of this going? That is the simplest oracle tarot kind of card draw you can have. But any deck that you use most likely will have a pretty darn good guidebook. And usually in the guidebooks, they will give you suggestions for the spread of cards. They might have a 4-card spread or a 7-card spread. Different authors have different ideas and suggest based on that deck the spreads that they might do, and they might offer you questions. So look in your guidebook, and you can use that as kind of a roadmap or a rule of thumb. But also because each new moon, each full moon, is based on a certain astrological configuration. And for a new moon, the sun and moon are conjoined in the same sign. So using something like my 2025 guidebook that has the energies of this XYZ new moon or XYZ full moon, I have tons of journal prompts that are attached to each of those lunation phases. You can use the journal prompts and pull cards. You, of course, can journal on your own, but how lovely to pull a card related to some of the journal questions. And you don't even need to do this on new and full moons. You can use oracle cards with journal prompts for yourself to divine more, to pull more out of yourself and from yourself. But make the reading and the spread your own, whatever feels true to you. But the questions I am going to walk you through today, and I'm going to pull some cards today from a deck that I feel like, to me, I have probably used on more new moons than I can count in my head, and had so many wild experiences. But whatever deck you use will give you the flavor. And like I suggested last time, you can use multiple decks. Have fun with it. Make it your own. There is no right or wrong way. It's really about you consciously co-creating with the energy and finding out what you need to know from yourself, your soul, and the divine. So make it your own. Another thing, too, that I want to remind you all of is when you pull a card and you pull it in reverse, meaning you pull the card upside down, some decks and the guidebooks that go along with those decks do not make mention of if you pull the card upside down. The deck that I'm going to use today says nothing about pulling the card in reverse. And there's a reason for that with this deck, and I'll explain it to you when we jump into it. But a lot of decks will say if you pull the card in reverse or in the protection, essentially what the message means is you need this a little bit louder, or you may be struggling to hear or see or enact the message in this card. We're trying to get your attention a little bit like more in your face energy. So if you pull a card in reverse, don't go, oh, I pulled it in reverse. It's more like, no, actually, this is very important for you. Pay attention, young lady. Pay attention, young lady or young man. Like it's saying, pay attention to this because this is important. So a lot of times when I pull a card in reverse, I absolutely marinate on that protection message and knowing that there's a punctuation mark on that card for me. And I will also read it in its upright position, meaning if I pulled a tarot card, the tarot definitely has an upright meaning and a reversed reading. A lot of oracle cards do too. And I will read both messages, but I will really take to heart the way in which the card came out of the deck for me. So don't flip the cards. Don't try to change what the universe is, accept what the universe is gifting you with that energy. But be intuitive, ask your own questions, but definitely create a spread for you that feels like a journey, like you're walking through a journey, and it's one card at a time. You don't flip them all over and try to read them all at once or know what 3 cards are coming next. I flip them one at a time and spend time with each card until I feel like that card, that message, that channel has completely worked through my energy and I am ready to move to the next question, to the next card in the spread. With preparing for this and getting yourself ready and open, I would absolutely light a candle or burn some sage. Smoke not only is a cleansing, purifying agent, it also is opening up the channels to the other worlds. It is sending up that smoke into the ethers. There is something sacred about smoke and has been in indigenous cultures and religions throughout time. But the smoke, so either lighting a candle, burning some sage, doing both, setting up your sacred space with your crystals or things on your altar or pictures, whatever feels symbolic to you and special to you that creates that sacred space and place within yourself and around you, make it sacred. That in and of itself is showing that your divinity, showing your devotion and your attention to the energy. You're bringing that intention of sacredness and reverence into the energy field. So the deck I'm going to use today, and I'm going to walk through a new moon spread with you, and I'm going to pull some cards. But the deck I'm using, I've had this deck, I don't know, probably 10 years, and it's called The Heart of Fairy Oracle. That's the book. If you're looking on YouTube, there's a little bit of a glare, but it's The Heart of Fairy Oracle. And this is kind of a dark deck. Like it's not all like light, joyful, and uplifting, because the world of fae and fairy, the fae kingdom, they're a little wicked. They're a little dark. They're tricksters, and they walk between our worlds. And when I do new moon spreads, I use my more psychological, and for lack of better words, let's call it darker cards. And I don't mean negative messages, heavy energies. I use more witchy, darker decks usually than my more kind of bright, uplifting decks. And not that this deck isn't uplifting. It's very clarifying. But in a new moon energy, I am really working to get into my psyche And the messages for me in this deck, and that's why I'm using it for us today, they're different because the world of fairy, and the authors of this are Brian and Wendy Froud, and they are very magical in the kingdom of fae and fairy and very familiar with it. And the illustrations on these cards they're very psychological and intellectual and magical. And so it gets me into that mindset just by looking at and engaging with the cards. So I want to read something at the beginning of their book. When we call in the Fae Kingdom, when we call in the fairies and we work with this deck. So whatever your deck you're working with, if there is a guidebook that gives you suggestions and an introduction or a certain sacred invocation to bring in at the beginning of your reading, a mantra, do that. Pray as you start. I already prayed before I jumped on this podcast. So I opened the sacred space. I cleansed the energy. I already set the stage and set the space up. And I asked for the messages that we receive today to be of the highest, most divine light and give us the seeds to germinate, to bring forth our most beautiful, luscious fruit for ourselves and for the world around us. So in this book, it says, "Hark, the fairies are here, inviting you to tell them your own story so they can weave it into their enchantments. Each moment in fairy is newly born, vital, and various, always different from the instant before. Nothing is fixed. The signs and symbols and the words you hear can only be translated by you. So look and feel and know." And I'm reading that for you because I love the end of it. Look, feel, know. I think that is the most beautiful invocation and roadmap for a new moon ceremony, to look, to feel, and to know. And this deck certainly invites that in. So I'm going to give us a few questions. And the first question, very much like the last episode I did, it's the anchor card. We're going to do a 4-card spread, and I'm going to keep in keeping with the last episode. I'm going to do an anchor card. So the anchor card really is what is going to guide and direct my energy over the course of this lunation cycle, the next 30 days. It'll anchor it in. It'll be a card that I may keep with me, put on my mirror or next to my bed, on my bedside table, on my altar, on my desk, whatever, to see it on the daily and be reminded of the energy that I am carrying forth throughout this lunation cycle. So the first question, I'm shuffling the cards, and the first question I'm going to ask is, what aligned action will anchor my intentions into reality? What aligned action will anchor our intentions into reality during the new moon cycle? Okay, first card. Okay, the first card I pulled is Perk Up Your Ears. And it's a little fairy with very perky, pointy ears. And it's a bit of an androgynous fairy. Most of the fairies in this deck are pretty androgynous. So it says, perk up your ears. And of course, I'm going to go to the guidebook. But as I would encourage all of you, if you look on this card, there's like this fairy that has kind of mouse-like ears. The ears are a little bit mouse-like, but if you look in the background of the card, and it's all like scribbled in pencil in black and white, so it's not a very colorful card, which is interesting because it's basically asking you to listen, like to really listen. I mean, this fairy has mouse ears, big mouse ears, but if you look closer at the card and the imagery, there's almost these rabbits in the background with really, like jackrabbits with really big ears. So in this deck, it's beautifully drawn and illustrated, and there's colors everywhere. But this is probably one of the only cards that is in pencil in black and white, because it's saying this is not about your vision and what you see. It's about what you hear. Listen, perk up your ears. And remember, I said this is the anchor card. So this card is telling me for the next 30 days, I need to listen. And y'all, I have to tell you, this is so crazy. So this morning, remember how I said I had a really early client? Like, look at this. This is like, I can't make this stuff up. I pulled a card for myself this morning. It's the listening card that I pulled from Colette Baron Reed's Enchanted Map. And the card is listening, and it's an elephant listening. And then the card that flew out for us today is perk up your ears. So I hope all of this is resonating with you. But obviously for me, what is coming through is, Amanda, you need to listen more than you're speaking. You really need to listen. You need to go within. So I'm just saying that out loud and going to hold it accountable. But that is wild, y'all. Like, that's so, my mind is a little bit blown in that, because I'm like, wow, you can't make this stuff up. And that's what's so divinely hysterical about this. And then for me, it's like, Amanda, shut up and listen. You have 2 ears and 1 freaking mouth. Okay, do the math and use it. All right, I'm going to read from the guidebook. And this guidebook, like I said, doesn't have the cards in reversed. And the reason it doesn't is because the cards say exactly what they mean. It doesn't matter if you pull them upright or reversed, because some of the cards are basically darker cards that are going to say, you're already doing this, and you need to focus on your anger, like whatever it may be. So the cards here, they don't need to be interpreted in reverse. Perk up your ears. Here are the main messages and themes: jumping to conclusions, listening with clarity, appropriate meaning. And I'll read what the guidebook says. Look at this lovely long-eared fairy. She's literally all ears. It's very easy to listen without really hearing, and to hear without understanding. Often things are said that are perceived as hurtful or critical, when perhaps listening more carefully or in a different way would have informed you that it wasn't the intention at all. I bet we can all relate to that, right? When we hear something and our feelings get hurt, or we jump to conclusions, and then we find out more information, and we were just selfish and self-centered in it, and it wasn't really about us at all, or intentional in the way that we took it. Rabbits and hares have very sensitive hearing. They jump and start at any unfamiliar noise, running to safety before they see what made the noise in the first place. They literally jump to conclusions before getting the full picture. Now, in a rabbit's case, this is probably wise, since hanging around often can lead to a very short life. But as a human, it's important to take time to really perk up your ears and listen to what is being said, and not only to what is being said, but what it actually means. You may be surprised at how often a meaning is quite different from what you first supposed. So our anchor card for this energy, and the draw that I've pulled for us, and obviously for me, since I'm getting this message twice, is, Amanda, you need to listen. And I really need to listen and digest and think and ponder before I respond, and maybe not even respond at all, whether it be the voice in my head or the words I speak to another. So that's our anchor card. Okay, let's pull another card. The second question I'm going to ask, and that you can use, is, what energy is beginning to emerge within me during the new moon? What energy is beginning to emerge within us during the new moon? I guess we better listen. I'm like, card hasn't come out yet, so I'm shuffling the card. There it is. Ooh, okay. Okay, y'all are going to get it because this deck's kind of wicked. The Queen of Bedlam. This card right here has like a naked woman and all these dancing fairies. I mean, it's kind of like Bacchus energy. And if you look close at this card, there's a unicorn dressed up as a knight, and there's a child and a naked woman with a red piece of fabric draped around her and what looks kind of like an apple. And then there's a queen with a full moon on her head and a crescent moon on her staff. And then there's a rabbit up in the left-hand corner. There's the rabbit again, listening. And I'm bringing it up to the screen so anybody that is watching this can see it and kind of check out some of the imagery on this card, because It's very cool and very layered. But this is one of the queen cards in this deck, and this deck has different suits. It has queens and kings, and then it has these other kinds of fairies. But this is the Queen of Bedlam. So let me read this because it's a little bit about like debauchery, I believe, because you can see it on that card. And remember how I said some of these cards don't need to be pulled in a reverse position because they already have that in it. Okay, the Queen of Bedlam, responsibilities of partnership, frustration, and the gift of sanity. Who is the Queen of Bedlam? What is her purpose? It may not be as complicated or as extreme as she appears. She's an everyday queen, a queen of day-to-day life, the keeper of the little things that when added together become a madness of sorts. Have you ever been doing something very ordinary, something that you've done 1,000 times, when suddenly it seems as if you do this particular thing one more time and you'll go mad? It could be as simple as packing your children's lunch boxes, sewing a button on your partner's trousers again, or cleaning a mess your dog just made. These are all responsibilities of partnership that must be dealt with over and over again. When the feeling of I'm going to go mad sweeps over at these times, the Queen of Bedlam has decided to visit. She is calmly sitting in your kitchen, pulling the petals off the flowers in the vase at the table. She is tearing your kitchen sponge into tiny pieces and cutting the sleeves off of your partner's shirts. She's doing this for you. She comes to take the feelings of total frustration, of not being able to continue living with any sanity at all, and envelops them in her immense capacity to embrace everyday madness. It is her reason for existing. So give generously to all your small neuroses. She'll take care of them and leave you the same to face another day. So essentially, remember the question was, what energy is beginning to emerge within me at this new moon? This is quite an interesting response because it's saying there's frustration in the boredom of day to day, the insanity of day in, day out life, and how it can become boring, mundane, exhausted, overwhelming, the burdens of responsibility. And what this card and this deck is saying, when you feel that way, give it to me. When you feel exhausted, frustrated, Groundhog Day energy, the minutia feels like manure, give me your SHIT, like give it to me. So for this card, she's saying, remember, you don't have to do all this alone. It's okay that you're a little bit frustrated, you're a little exhausted, that you love your children, but oh my gosh, they're a lot. Or you love your spouse or your partner, but man, if they would just get their you-know-what together, it would be so much easier. When you feel that way, recognize it, honor it, and then give it to the divine. Give it to the Queen of Bedlam. Give it to your higher power. The message that is coming in, and especially through the question, what energy is beginning to emerge within me in this new moon? What that says to me is remembering when I get frustrated, impatient, exhausted, overwhelmed by adulting and responsibility, and I'm sure that is familiar to a lot of us out there, I can recognize it and then I can choose to surrender it to the divine, to ask for a new day, to ask for new life to come in. So this new moon and this new moon oracle drawing is reminding me to really be honest about my frustration, about what it feels like to be an adult and be mature, rather than denying that or feeling like I have to push through and keep a smile on my face. It's saying get real and surrender it up to something higher. It's okay to feel that way, but remember, you are not alone, and there are angels, guides, and guardians waiting for you to ask for help. Ask for divine intervention and divine help. And so maybe that resonates with one of you today or all of you. All right, the next question I will ask is, what wisdom and clarity am I being called to cultivate during this new moon? What wisdom and clarity are we being called to cultivate during this new moon? There it is. Oh, this is sweet. The Fairy of Growth. This is a beautiful card. It's like a green-blue fairy that is sitting on a little leaf, and she has these huge, gorgeous wings. She's tiny, but it's like electric green and blue. And there's nothing surrounding her. Like the Queen of Bedlam had all sorts of consorts around her. This fairy is just alone in the darkness, but almost like illuminated by her own light. And it's coming from her crown chakra. And she's sitting on this beautiful leaf, the Fairy of Growth. And I'll just tell you, too, the number on that card is 33, so it's a master number. I didn't make a call to action on the numerology on any of the cards, but I certainly saw them. The last card, the Queen of Bedlam, was a 2, which, of course, was a call to action around partnership and responsibility. And the first one, Perk Up Your Ears, was 48, which 4 plus 8 equals 12, the number 12, which is the energy of the 3. And 3, the energy of the 3 in numerology is about communication. So you can see whether they intended it or not, the numerology speaks to the messages on the cards. So the 33 being the master healer, let's see what this Fairy of Growth has to tell us, especially around our question, which, to remind you, is what wisdom and clarity am I being called to cultivate during this new moon? Movement, growth, and the revisioning process. Look at her sitting on a young green leaf, like a bud just opening to a full flower. This is the Fairy of Growth. Growth can mean so many things. One thing it always means is movement and change. Growth doesn't stand still. Growth, by its very nature, is a constantly changing process. To stay in one mindset or one mode of being is to stagnate. If you move through life with an awareness of everything around you, you will grow. You won't be able to help it. If you draw this card, take time to think about how your life is changing and how you can direct that change for the good. If life seems to be stagnant, which is interesting because that's a direct response to the last card, the exhaustion, boredom, overwhelm of day-to-day life and responsibility, because that can feel like stagnation. Even though there's movement in that, it doesn't feel like new life, adventure, and change. So what it says here is, if your life seems to be stagnant, then this card is especially helpful for you. Look at the Fairy of Growth and feel the energy of her unfolding wings. She is just about to take flight and discover a new adventure. You can take flight too. You don't have to fly far or explore distant lands. You just have to take a step forward and see where that step leads you. So spread your wings and grow. It's kind of like the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And the question was, what wisdom am I being called to cultivate right now? And it's about taking action, moving out of stagnation into action. And just as a reminder, as I would be pulling these cards personally for myself, after I pulled each one, I would be journaling. And we're doing this together today, but each card I would reflect on what is going on in my life, how it resonates. What specifically am I experiencing? Are these cards speaking to and divining or inspiring me to look at in new ways? And this card in particular, especially with the energy of the 33 on it, because the 33 is about healing ourselves in order to heal others. It is the master healer. And this card is about new life and new adventure. And so it says, when we heal and when we recognize that we are sovereign and empowered, we get to direct and guide our own action through divine will versus solely our human will. And if you look at these 3 cards together already, it's an important time to listen, to take information in, to really gather the external facts and discern within your heart, It's a time to let go of boredom and overwhelm, because what is coming next is growth, new adventure, new life. And in order for that to happen, I am a divine co-creator. So I am a part. I can't just say, hey, God, do this for me. I can say, hey, God, I need your help on this. But that's going to come with my part too, which means what wise action can I take today? And what I would take from this in a new moon is, what can I do today? So I would journal about it. And after I did my ceremony and my journaling, I would figure out some sort of practical action related to my own intentions, my own phase and stage of life, where I could take some sort of action. Maybe it's reaching out to a friend I hadn't talked to in a long time. Maybe it is cleaning out the messy drawer in the kitchen. Maybe I'm really frustrated professionally and I've been complaining about it for months. So maybe I sit down and I pull up my last resume and I have a talk with ChatGPT and start to revise it. I don't know, but what action can I take? I'm a part of this, so take action. So this card specifically is saying plant the seed, but I actually want you to demonstrate your action literally to the universe. And that's a lot of the energy of the 33, is like feeling it internally and demonstrating it externally. And that's how you can be of your greatest service. And the fourth card, let's pull our fourth card. What limiting beliefs or unconscious patterns am I ready to shift or heal? What limiting beliefs or unconscious patterns are we ready to shift and heal? So this question, and the way that I've posed it, is just closing it out with saying, hey, where am I getting in my way? Like, where am I getting in my way? What limiting pattern is really not going to serve me and my highest, greatest good over the course of the next 30 days and possibly beyond? What can I recognize and work on? Ooh, the Queen of Owls. This is a really powerful card. And the number on it is 6, which 33 is 6. So this is the base frequency of the card before it, if you're looking at it from a numerological standpoint. But the Queen of Owls is all feminine energy and this funny little mushroom down in the bottom. There's a little mushroom lady. There's weird little animals, the queen. You can see all the energy on the card. There's a lot happening in here. I think it's funny we've drawn 2 queens. There's lots of kings and princes and different and elves in this deck, and we've drawn 2 queens. So that's pretty significant, and that's very strong feminine energy, obviously. All right, the Queen of Owls. And remember, the question is, what limiting beliefs or unconscious patternings am I needing to be aware of so I can shift and heal at this time? This is so good. Physical healing, wholeness, and wellness. So right there, just in looking at the guidebook and looking at this energy, it's saying, pay attention to your physical body. Are you taking care of your physical body? This is the bright queen of physical healing. When the physical body is unbalanced or in pain, it can be difficult to find connection to anything other than the pain or disease. Relationships can falter and fail when all of your attention pivots on dealing with pain. When your physical body becomes the only thing you can focus on, turn to this bright, gentle being. She radiates wholeness and wellness and can help you find the inner strength you need to come through disease into healing and health again. The pain is real, the disease is real, but the power to heal is real and within you as well. Concentrate on her image and reconnect with the healing energies of fairy. So the question was, what unconscious or limiting belief is holding me back? And to me, that says really focus on what my body is telling me. Any pain, any aches, any dis-ease or dysfunction, whether it is I've got the flu and it's in my face, or I have a long-term illness or disease or autoimmune, or it is waking up and feeling achy and creaky. If it's hormonal, whatever resonates with you right now, It's saying, what are those messages telling you? And that makes me think of Louise Hay. There's this is from one of Louise Hay's book. Louise Hay, the founder of Hay House Publishers, who was kind of the OG of affirmations. And if you don't know who Louise Hay is, you should do a little Google search on Louise Hay, but hopefully most of you out there are familiar with her. And she was like no other, with the body talking to you and knowing that the body tells us a story, and also the way that we construct our words in our mind has an effect on our reality. But one thing Louise Hay would say is, so often when we are in dis-ease, pain, poor health, we immediately run to the medicine cabinet because we are in a culture where it is allopathic healing. And I am not dismissing if something systemic is going on and you have some form of cancer. So I'm not minimizing anything like that. But in general, what she was saying is we have a culture that when we have pain, we immediately go outside of ourselves to turn the volume down on the pain. And she says that is backwards. When our body is in pain, can we go inside and talk to it? Where is that pain? What is it demonstrating to me? What is it telling me? Is it telling me, is it your shoulders? Are you feeling the weight of the world on your shoulders? Is it your abdomen and your gut? Are you having trouble digesting and processing something in your life? Is it your head? Are you having a hard time really seeing and comprehending what is going on in your world and seeing with clear vision? Your body is brilliant. And so this card is reminding us to really know that we have all the answers within. So go to the physical body, nurture it and care for it. Because when we do that, if we don't believe we can heal ourselves, physical healing, and that is such a beautiful place in thinking about the power of our consciousness, is radical healing within the body. And there are so many stories of that, where when we get down to our limiting beliefs and pains and traumas, a lot of times that is interconnected with whatever disease process or illness we may have going on in the physical body. And I've talked enough about this with myself, where my physical body will show me what is going on spiritually and psychospiritually. And that's what this card is reminding us. So remembering how brilliant your body and your biology are, and they're like a roadmap for your healing. Believe that and utilize it, especially in this new moon cycle or forever. I love this card spread for us, and I love the anchor card that reminds us all to listen, because this card is saying, really perk up your ears, get still and listen. So wherever you are in creating magic around new and full moons, using oracle cards, tarot cards, make it your own. And just remember that that time during the new moon is so magical in terms of seeding desires, wishes, and intentions. And I always say it's like blowing out candles on a birthday cake or throwing coins in a fountain. When you blow those candles out or you throw the coin in the fountain, and this is new moon energy, different than full moon energy. When you blow the candle out and you make your wish, you don't immediately say, okay, what do I do to make this wish happen? You eat a piece of cake. You marinate in the joy and celebration of your birthday and the wish. When you throw the coin in the fountain, it's just that magical, wondrous, childlike feeling. And that's the energy of a new moon. It's wondrous. It's expectancy versus expectation. It's extraordinary. It's awesome. That's the energy of a new moon. And funny enough, in this spread, we did have a call to action because it was talking about growth. And what it was saying is, what is it that you can do today? And I think with any new moon spread, and a full moon spread too, any oracle spread really, when I journal and things come to the surface, I always like to seal it with some sort of action and to be accountable to that, because to me, it's like it closes out the energy. And if let's say I got a message like clean house, reorganize, clear clutter. Well, after I finished doing all my new moon ceremony or full moon ceremony, whatever it was, then maybe I go do a load of laundry. Like just something to demonstrate to myself and to the universe that I heard the message and I am capable of taking accessible, practical action with ease. I love that acronym for God, good, orderly direction. Good, orderly direction. I feel like that flows in line with pulling oracle cards. So when you finish up your ceremony, be it around a new or a full moon or any other time, sit in some stillness for a bit. Meditate if you want to turn some meditation music on, or you're doing this outside under a dark moon or moonlight. You can leave your crystals out, of course, for a few nights and you're journaling and all of your stuff, but close it out and say thank you. Always in the end, say thank you to yourself, to your sacred space and tools, and to the universe, and to the moon. And you can say something like, as above, so below, or and so it is, or namaste, or amen. Something sacred that creates verbal closure. It's a really beautiful way to seal your practice. And then go do the laundry. Take your action. Rewrite your resume, whatever it may be. Thank you all for joining me. If you look in the show notes, there's a blog that goes with this. That is really great. And like I said, the 2025 guidebook, if you don't have it, there are journal prompts for every single new and full moon, the retrogrades, where you can do card spreads for all of these, and that will give you your roadmap aligned with those actual energies. And I have great new and full moon blogs that tell you about the energies of each astrological sign and their attributes, just snippets, so you have a framework and you could use those for questions. And then I have a couple of free ceremonies, a new moon ceremony and a full moon ceremony. So there's lots of tools I have created around this for you. You've got the tools. Now make your own magic. Take care, everyone. Be well. Thank you so much for listening to Soul Sessions. If you've got questions, do not hesitate to reach out. Email us, podcast@soulsessions.me. If you love this podcast and you want to hear more, make sure you're following it, liking and subscribing, and sharing it with other people. Send this energy out. Share it with other people. Remember, you can always get your dose of Soul Sessions. New episodes drop on Wednesdays. You can also follow me on Instagram, TikTok. It's @soulpathology, or check out soulpathology.com. I appreciate you and your light. Thanks for listening.